morning. I'm from New York, so when I say good morning, I got to hear it back. Good morning. Yeah, that's great. How are you all doing today? Yeah, how was yesterday? Wasn't it awesome? I mean, you know, I tell you, like, with the invention of the internet and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all these things that my 12-year-old knows about and I just find out about when they're already past their prime stage, I don't think there's anything that still beats people coming together, being in the same space, and actually having face-to-face conversations and dialogue, right? And the conversations that we've been having over the last day and that we're going to have today are just the kind of conversations we need right now and our country needs right now as we talk about how we bring the issue of climate change, good jobs, and a strong 21st century infrastructure to the nation's agenda, right? And so we're so glad that you guys are here and you're able to join us in person, not just online. But we also are hoping, for those of you that are on Twitter and Facebook, that you are sort of following us on Twitter. Our hashtag is GoodGreenJobs, and I hope you're liking us on Facebook. So we want you to like us in person and also online. This morning, we're going to hear from a number of tremendous speakers. One of the newest winners of the Goldman Environmental Prize is here, and the prize recognizes grassroots environmentalists. We're also going to have a panel conversation about what states are doing to combat and promote energy efficiency at their level. We're going to break after that, and you'll go to 3 more amazing workshop sessions. And then you'll come back here at 4:30 for a final plenary session today that will include a keynote by President Trumka of the AFL-CIO. So we have a great day lined up for you, and we hope that you enjoy the day. To start us off this morning, we are really honored and privileged to hear from Congresswoman Michelle Lujan Grisham. Representative Grisham is serving her first term in Congress, representing the people of New Mexico's 1st District. Although she's new to Congress, and what a Congress to start with, right? Acting as a public servant and helping her community is not new to Representative Grisham. She's been a tireless advocate and community leader for many, many years in her community. She was elected this year and is serving on the House committees which have jurisdiction over agriculture, budget, and government reform. Please join me in giving her a very warm welcome today. I got it. You guys are so nice. Thank you.
We're gonna, oh, wow. I wish I could be this tall every single day. So we're going to, and I know that we need to be started and on time, but I'm going to fool around with this box for a second because I always try to strike the right balance just like you are so that you can move forward. This may be a little too tall, so we might have to have some audience help. Oh. I help you. No, you can help me, Gloria. All right. Am I too? I'm okay just like this, right? All right. Thank you, Gloria. You're wonderful. Yeah, we'll save that for the really tall men who come up. That's wonderful. Thank you all very much. I am so excited to be here and so honored, and I'll tell you why. That as a freshman in Congress, we are, as you know, challenged about whether or not this wonderful, diverse Democratic class that I belong to can really make a difference in an institution that has lost its credibility, where many would say has lost any hope of recovery for moving and advancing anything forward, certainly missing the boat and missing the opportunity to really engage in doing something about jobs and the economy, which right now is the only work that we should be focused on. And I have to tell you, after 3 months, and coming off a campaign where we focus primarily on the inability of Congress to work together and the problems with partisanship, I am incredibly optimistic that the tide is changing and that you have to elect individuals, and we have to have individuals who are willing to serve, who really believe that we can compromise productively without losing the values and the importance of the issues that we're identifying as the single most important things to do. And this group here embodies better than most groups that can be done. Because we have at least 12 organizations, as I understand it, an alliance, a coalition, looking at how you can take jobs and move that into and utilizing labor and labor organizations and make climate change and clean energy and a clean environment your platform and priority. Now, if we can create a coalition like this, then Congress can become a body that's more about advocacy and change and less about individual agendas. And your work, thank you. And I'm so proud to have the opportunity not only to say thank you to you, because I can tell you exactly what you've identified, your blueprint. I'm clear about those 5 issues that you've identified, and now I'm just preaching to the choir. So I think instead this morning, I want to reiterate those 5, but really talk about the power of this group, the potential that we have to really make a difference, what's going on already in my state related to this alliance, and that for the first time, I think people on both sides of the aisle, it's not as robust as it needs to be, but that we are saying this today. We are talking about climate change in a way that you don't have individuals in Congress and other organizations recoiling, particularly the business industry and some of the energy industry, saying that it doesn't exist, it's not a priority, it's not an issue that we should let distract us from the other things that are important. There isn't anything as important as saving the planet. And the notion that these are all separate from improving the economy and bringing about better jobs is absolute nonsense. And so what have you said? Let's invest in infrastructure. Yes, let's invest in infrastructure. We have the president's budget. I'm on the budget committee. We're talking about those investments in infrastructure, in jobs, doing something about better transportation, making sure that we are using a mass transit and a clean energy transportation system that moves us, again, from that individual, and I'm from the Southwest, where we all have our trucks, an individual car environment. Because if we don't do that, we're going to miss incredible opportunities, even though our fuel efficiency is improving and our requirements related to the manufacture of vehicles is improving in that regard. But it won't be enough if we stop there. So thank you for moving that and for looking at green manufacturing. In Albuquerque, we have a green chamber that helps businesses. I'm a small business owner that actually help me think about ways where I could be more energy efficient. A second platform. Consumers, businesses, individuals, government, policymakers, if we don't bring innovation and energy efficiency into the equation, again, we can't move forward regardless of what our investments are in the future. As a Bernalillo County Commissioner, we brought the very first solar storage battery test to Albuquerque. It's an American-made battery. It shows great promise for storing solar, capturing that energy, and then using it on the grid when you need it, so that it's not just an immediate solar, put it on the grid and then it's gone. And I'm very excited. We also brought smart technology from other companies across the United States to Albuquerque. So we can do more of that. Let's make it in America. Let's manufacture here. Let's bring our jobs home. Let's invest in alternative energy. In my state, I want us to be the solar wind capital of the United States, and there is no reason that the Southwest can't be producing enough solar energy, not just for the United States, but for many countries abroad. And that's the kind of investment. You know, we subsidized oil and gas and still do. But we are unwilling to make the same investments in clean alternative energy. Now, I'm on the agricultural committee, and I'm really excited about that. And in my state, people are like, oh, Congresswoman, we're so sorry they put you on the ag committee. That must be so embarrassing. Now all of your constituents are livestock and cattle. Well, now wait a minute. That's a committee where a freshman gets to do policy and appropriations. That's a committee that does what? Rural economic development and alternative energy investments. Agriculture, USDA. We should use every tool, every committee, every opportunity to make sure that these priorities are moving forward so it's collective again, so that we don't get bottlenecked in just one place. This is a committee, with your help, we're going to build more coalitions. We make a difference. I love that you're invested in research and development. The president's budget finally talks about putting more money into innovation, because without innovation, we really can't take these agendas into the 22nd century, and that's exactly where we ought to be headed. So I'm excited about that. Now I'm going to end with a little bit of a downer and then turn it around and close, because I know that you've got a substantive panel coming and that you guys are ready to do really important and difficult work, so that you can count on folks like me to implement those ideas and make a difference in your communities and a difference for your families. The downer is, while we pass the Violence Against Women's Act, while we're going to do immigration reform, and we're going to do something on gun violence, we're going to have another important vote potentially tomorrow on cybersecurity. And we got to balance privacy issues with making sure that we're dealing with the nation's security issues and threats. So we're getting policy work, and these votes and these efforts are absolutely bipartisan. But where we can't yet come together is on the budget. This is clearly where we have our values are completely separate. One side of the House, the Republican values are we've got to have a balanced budget in 10 years. The Democratic side, and I am really making this general. And on the Democratic side of the House, as you know, we want a balanced approach, which includes investments in infrastructure and clean energy. It includes having climate change as a priority. And we say, look, it's going to take much longer to create an environment where you're dealing with the deficit and the debt. And the best way to do that without forsaking critical federal investments in programs, investments in infrastructure, and clearly the social safety net is by growing the economy, doing what labor and you know best, create jobs. Create jobs. And we can do that over a 20-year design or more or a little less and really change the dynamic and set a foundation that can set the stage for this country for decades. But we're not quite ready about what those compromises are. And I believe by 2014, with the work that we're doing on the policy issues and substantive issues, we get there. And so here's where I end. This coalition can really create the difference between getting those balances and getting those priorities right by reinvesting in jobs here, high-paying, clean energy investments, and getting that done in 2014, by continuing this work and by pushing hard and by working. And I just met the Yvette, and she's incredible. You've got such a dynamic group in this alliance. I'm counting on you to make sure that not just me as the freshman, but that every member of Congress values your work and is ready to be your champion, and that it's a partnership for change, and that we're really and actually going to get it done. I'm dedicated to that. I congratulate you for your work, and I'm so honored to have been asked to open your event this morning. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope that you'll have me again. Thank you. I'm not sure what happens next.
I take you away. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
It's my job this morning to introduce you to Nora Padilla, winner of the 2013 Goldman Environmental Prize for South and Central America. Nora has been recycling with her family since she was 7. Her family fled violence-plagued rural Colombia and moved to Bogota, where going through trash piles in the city gave the family of 12 children a way to survive. Padilla progressed to a leadership position among the recyclers, who organized into cooperatives that provided a measure of safety and protection in the streets. She gradually rose through the ranks and began to see a clear need to fight for recyclers' basic labor rights and the dignity and recognition for the service they contribute to the city. Thanks to Padilla's leadership, the cooperatives have grown into the Association of Recyclers of Bogota, an organization that represents the city's 3,000 informal recyclers and the National Association of Recyclers in Colombia, with 12,000 members strong. Together, Padilla and the recyclers are revolutionizing the waste management infrastructure in Colombia. Recyclers are now formally recognized stakeholders in Bogota's waste management planning. They go to work wearing uniforms and identification cards to acknowledge their profession. ARB operates recycling centers with plans to expand operations to what will be the largest recycling center run by informal recyclers in Latin America. Padilla's achievements come in spite of Colombia's pervasive culture of violence and powerful economic interests. She has faced down powerful adversaries, from multinational waste corporations that want to profit from burning and burying trash, to the sons of Colombia's former president, who wanted to force them out of business in order to grab the valuable materials that they collect every day. As her successes have grown, so have slanderous accusations and physical threats to her safety. Padilla is now leading negotiations with the city's Public Utilities Department on a new waste management contract for recyclers, paving new frontiers for the rest of Colombia and other countries in Latin America grappling with waste management. Nora is a member of Gaia, and Christy Keith from Gaia will translate. Please join me in welcoming Nora Padilla.
Muchas gracias, muy buenos días.
Thank you very much and good morning.
Yo formo parte de un sector de trabajadores que encarna el real trabajo verde.
I'm part of a sector of workers that lives in our own bodies, real green jobs.
Más de 15 millones de recicladores en el mundo. Recuperamos millones y millones de toneladas de plástico, papel, cartón, metales y todo lo que puede ser susceptible de recuperar y de aprovechar para las grandes industrias.
More than 15 million recyclers around the world. We recover paper, we recover plastics, we recover metals, we recover all sorts of materials that can be used and conserved for industry.
A pesar de ese gran aporte nuestro a la economía mundial y a la protección del medio ambiente,
even though we make this great contribution to the world economy and to the protection of the environment,
nuestros ingresos han sido ingresos de hambre.
The earnings that we have are earnings that lead to hunger.
Por eso, hace 5 años, cuando estuve por primera vez en los Estados Unidos,
This is why 5 years ago, when I was for the first time in the United States,
y a pesar de haber empezado una lucha y una organización hace 25 años,
and even though I have been organizing for over 25 years and struggling for 25 years for that organization,
en la sede de un sindicato de trabajadores de las plantas de reciclaje,
at the main offices of a union of recycling workers,
en un letrero decía, la única lucha que se pierde es la que no se da.
there was a sign that said, the only struggle that is lost is the struggle that is never started.
Con esa enseñanza y esa determinación llegué nuevamente a Colombia.
With this lesson and this determination, I went back to Colombia
a proponerles a mis compañeros que debíamos fortalecer los lazos de integración entre toda la cadena de valor del reciclaje para hacer una sola defensa.
to propose to my colleagues that we needed to strengthen the ties between all of the different people involved in the recycling process to be able to have one united struggle.
Y las diferencias históricas que teníamos en el gremio
And the historical differences that we had between different parts of the sector, different workers in the sector,
dejaron de serlo para enfocar nuestra fuerza en dos propósitos fundamentales.
weren't as important as our ability to focus our struggle on two primary objectives.
Defender el legítimo derecho de millones de personas en el trabajo del reciclaje
To defend the legitimate right of millions of people to participate in recycling,
y lograr que se les pagara una remuneración a cargo de las tarifas del sistema de aseo, igual que ocurría con las grandes empresas de aseo.
and to achieve that we would be paid for our work, for our service, a payment that would be equal to what the large multinational waste companies were receiving for their work.
Cosa que hemos logrado en estos últimos 6 meses en Brasil, Argentina, Colombia, India.
And,
y,
go ahead.
sigue, sigue.
And this is something that we have been achieving in the last 6 months in Brazil, in Colombia, in Argentina, in India. We've been making progress towards these goals.
Y sabemos que ese es el cambio radical que necesitábamos.
And we know that this is the sort of radical change that we needed.
En los siguientes meses, los ingresos de los recicladores aumentarán para poder darle mejor alimentación a sus hijos y generar unas mejores condiciones para que estos vayan a su escuela.
In the next few months, recyclers in Colombia will be paid, they will earn more, so they will be able to give better food to their children, and they'll be able to assure that their children are able to go to school.
Y la proyección para los siguientes años será que tengan la posibilidad de tener vivienda digna, que sus hijos ya no vayan a la escuela sino a la universidad también, y que además podamos construir nuestras propias empresas de transformación de materiales y nuestras propias empresas de prestación del servicio público de aseo. Muchas gracias.
And in the next few years, we are going to keep moving forward to assure that recyclers are able to have dignified housing, that their children are able to not just go to school, but to go to university, and that we are able to have our own companies of transforming materials, and our own companies to move forward in the sector. Thank you. Si quieres gritar una consigna.
Para despedirme de ustedes, quiero contarles el eslogan que tienen los recicladores en todo el mundo y es: si no hay fronteras para los que explotan, no deberán haber fronteras para los que luchan.
To say goodbye to you, I want to share a slogan that we use in Colombia, which is that if there are no borders for those who exploit, there can't be borders for those of us who struggle. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nora. Listening to you speak, I could not help but think about the goals we had at the first Good Jobs, Green Jobs conference in 2008. It's truly not enough for a job to simply be green. Those jobs must also be good jobs. They must have family-supporting wages and respect for the people who do them. I'm joined this morning by Kit Kennedy, Senior Attorney for NRDC, and Fred Redmond, International Vice President of the United Steelworkers. For the next section of our program, the awarding of the Green Jobs Champion Award in 2013 to Congressman Bobby Rush. Blue-Green Alliance has been proud to give out this award every year since 2009 to recognize members of Congress and the administration for their efforts to lead the expansion of the clean economy. There's been no stronger voice for the importance of addressing climate change in Congress than Congressman Bobby Rush. As the ranking member today of the Energy and Power Subcommittee of the House, Congressman Rush has sent 24 letters to Chairman Fred Upton and Ed Whitefield, asking them to hold meetings to allow respected scientists to testify to the science of climate change and the urgent need to reduce carbon pollution. All of those letters have been ignored with one exception, and that was a letter stating that it was not necessary to allow scientists to testify because the last Congress, quote, frequently addressed climate change issues. Congressman Rush knows that the American people expect more from their elected leaders. They want immediate action to make us all safer. And it is for this and for a lifetime of commitment to struggle that we are so proud to give the Green Jobs Champion Award to Congressman Bobby Rush this year. Please join me in welcoming him to our meeting.
And power to the people. I thought I would find some seniors in the audience, as am I. I'm humbled by this award. I'm humbled by this organization and the history and legacy of this organization. And I'm humbled by just being in the company of Dave and Fred, Dave Foster and Fred Redmond and Kit Kennedy. I'm humbled just because of there are three individuals who have earned all of our respect and love and appreciation for the many years that they have dedicated their lives to the issues of justice and issues of peace and the issues of an economic parity that we all seek in our nation and in the world. But most of all, I'm humbled by being in your presence. You are on the forefront of amazing challenges and opportunities. There are people throughout the world, and certainly in this nation, and in the 1st Congressional District, of which I am just privileged to represent, who are looking for a future that is constructive, a future that is rewarding, a future that they can also make significant contributions to the world. And the green economy is at the forefront of that future. Green jobs is something that gives hope to the hopeless. And I am so delighted to be with you here at this annual conference of the Blue-Green Alliance. Yesterday, I was on the floor speaking for 5 minutes, arguing and pummeling my Republican colleagues. Most of them are fine fellows, fine ladies. And really, up until a few years ago, or in one instance, up until about a year and a half ago, when he became the chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, he also believed in climate change. But now all of a sudden, since he became the chair, he's had a new reorientation, I might add. He thinks that climate change now is a hoax. We will continue to fight to bring scientists before the Congress, scientists before the committee, climatologists who will address the issue that you and I believe in our heart, know, accept as fact, that there is a problem with climate change in the world and that we have to alter our conduct, our policies. And so I'm on my way now to a markup in the same committee. But I wanted to stop by here, not just to get an award, but to get some new energy, to be refreshed. I want to stop by here to get some fuel in my tank, because we've got a relentless battle that's going on in the U.S. House of Representatives. And we got to do something to shake that place up and shake those people up. We've got to turn them upside down. And I think that, as I look back, I think that God has prepared me for this moment, because I do believe in shaking things up. Thank you so much. God bless.
All right, let's hear it for Congressman Rush. You know, it's always the soft-spoken ones that really are our loudest fighters, right? He's amazing, and we're so happy for his work and grateful that he was able to join us. I want to, before I introduce our next panel, I just want to remind everyone that you get a chance to ride a car while you're here that is not your own. And doesn't belong to your parents. So it's like being 16 all over again. So if you haven't already test driven the new Chevy Cruze and the Eco, you can do so. They're really fun, so please take the time to have a joyride while you're here. And the second announcement I just want to make is, you know, it's great for us to sit here and talk about what needs to be done, but one of the things that we believe at Blue Green is that in addition to talking about it within ourselves, we're also really clear that we have to make our voices heard to our elected officials. So tomorrow, just a reminder, we're going to do Advocacy Day, where we're going to start here at 8 a.m. with a training and breakfast. And then we're going to head over to the Hill for our Advocacy Day and really meet with our elected officials and let them know that the issues of climate change, infrastructure, good union jobs are a part of what we want them to take on and address in their session. So while waiting for Congress to act can be frustrating, but none of you know what I'm talking about there, right? Our next set of panelists know that there is more for us to do right now than just wait. Instead of sitting idly by, they are a set of environmental, labor, local, and state leaders who are already working on one of the most common sense things we can do to reduce America's energy use, and that's improving the energy efficiency of our homes and office buildings. Here to introduce them and their efforts is Roger Platt, Senior VP of Global Policy and Law at the U.S. Green Building Council. In this position, Roger is responsible for overseeing the policy aspects of the increasing global adoption of green building and urban development practices. Before joining USGBC, Roger worked as a senior vice president and counsel with the Real Estate Roundtable and as a consultant to President Clinton and his then newly formed Corporation for National and Community Service. Please join me in welcoming Roger and our next panel.
Thank you so much. We have a wonderful panel for you now. on a topic that, while it was referred to as common sense, also has a lot of wisdom and I think visionary elements to it. This is a conference, obviously, that's about green jobs. And I was reminded of the importance of that this morning when my daughter was talking to me, who's just graduated from college, summa cum laude, and she is watch while I market her over the rest of this event. And she plunked in Google the words, you know, she's looking for a job. So she wants a good job and she wants green jobs. And it pops up and she goes, Dad, did you know you're about to introduce some people this morning at a conference? And I said, absolutely, I do. And the people that I'm gonna introduce, she's amazed that I can brush my teeth, let alone, you know, get to a conference and do anything. So I basically said, I'm going to be introducing a teacher that's helping people get green jobs. I'm going to be introducing an advocate and a lawyer that's trying to make New York and the rest of the country a better place for a green economy. I'm going to be introducing a lawmaker from California. I'm going to be introducing a leader, a governor of one of the most progressive states in the country, and I'm going to be introducing a visionary business activist. So what I want to do now is give you I'm going to introduce and then I'm going to have them introduce themselves with a few words, and then we'll get into some question and answers. Forgive the speed with which this is all happening. It's kind of speed dating with very, very prominent guests. But as you know, things need to move quickly here. So I'm going to start by introducing Phil Campbell, who I referred to before as the teacher in our pack of stars, green job stars. Phil is a training specialist for UA. He's won all kinds of accolades within the union and within the training world. He is kind of the teacher, the mentor, a crucial figure on this. And I'm going to let you also just introduce, make some initial comments. Thank you, Phil.
All right, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to be here today, and also bring greetings from our General President, Bill Hite, who actually was going to be speaking today but couldn't, so he sends his regrets. But he sent his most valuable staff member to be on the panel. So we'll go and, you know, when we talk about energy efficiency, it can really be a very valuable job creator for many of the trades. But I think specifically for the piping trades that the United Association, which I'm a member of the United Association, plumber, pipe fitters, HVACR technicians, and sprinkler fitters. This will include new construction jobs, installing sustainable energy efficient technology in new buildings, such as new HVACR systems, new motors, new pumps, new piping systems. But what will create even more jobs is retrofitting existing buildings that have old technology and are energy wasting technology. We'll be able to save energy and cost-saving technology. And then another part of that is afterwards maintaining and servicing those systems. If we don't maintain and service the energy efficient systems that we put in and keep them energy saving, they'll just go back to being the energy wasters that we had to begin with. So this is an ongoing thing. We build green buildings, we have to keep them green. However, what could be probably the most significant part of this, and energy efficiency, is water conservation. I think that's something that a lot of people forget about. If we can save and decrease our water use, that will not only preserve our most precious resource, but we could save very easily up to 50% of the water that we use daily in moving and treating sewage and creating potable water. This will also save 50% of the cost of power that we use in one of the most expensive and the highest use of power in the energy sector. Moving and treating water is one of the most expensive things that we do. To do this and to accomplish this, we need to build new buildings with water efficient fixtures and plumbing systems, and also again retrofit buildings with new fixtures, new water saving features. And most importantly, we need to replace our antiquated infrastructure, which is leaking daily and in some cases estimated of losing 50% of the potable water that we spend so much money on and we spend so much money moving throughout the country. To accomplish this, our workforce needs to be highly trained in the skills needed to implement these new technologies. What we have to do is to green our existing workforce in the new methodologies with ongoing training that is flexible and targeted to industry needs so that we can provide training whenever and wherever possible. And additionally, we have to attract new people that will come into the trades, which seems to be more and more difficult as we go along into a trades and an industry that seems to be becoming increasingly less popular. So to end on that sour note.
Well, let's not end on that sour note. Let's emphasize the fact that, first of all, I'm surprised when he was referencing the various unions, we didn't get a little more shout-outs, a little more positive there. But he is involved in water, and water is absolutely the next crisis-oriented resource for the whole globe. It's what the future wars will be fought over. And so people that get involved in this and get involved in the kind of work that he's talking about are going to feel very smart in a few years. So anyway, I just want to emphasize that and not be so grim about it.
Thank you.
Like combining it with some grim information about the future, but still job-related opportunities. Kit Kennedy is the lawyer, the advocate that I identified before. She's with the Natural Resources Defense Council. This is the thinking person's environmental group, one that gets a tremendous amount done, but also is not afraid of placing a lot of both political power, but a lot of brain power also behind what they do. She has worked there for 25 years, which is a tribute to the organization because a lot of people would like to have Kit Kennedy advocating for them. She worked for Andrew Cuomo for a couple of years as his top environmental lawyer in New York State, and now back again with NRDC, and has a tremendous amount of insight into what the state of New York has done, can do, to create a greener economy. And I'm going to ask her to say a few words now. Kit Kennedy.
Great. Thank you, Roger, and thanks to Dave Foster and everyone at the Blue-Green Alliance for putting together this great conference, and to all of you for waking up early and joining us to give us your ideas and your energy. As Roger mentioned, I'm with NRDC. We like to think of ourselves as the fighting person's environmental organization because we're out there trying to change things, trying to fight climate change and build the clean energy future. And I'll keep this brief. We all know, and we've long known, that energy efficiency is the fastest, cheapest, cleanest solution to America's energy and pollution woes. And we also know it's the solution that's going to create the most skilled jobs for all of you, for America's plumbers, for our electricians, for all the many trades who are working on construction, building, and manufacturing. And yet, we've really only scratched the surface of the energy efficiency potential here in the United States. Existing buildings in our country use 40% of our energy. We pay $400 billion in energy payments to meet these energy needs, yet much of this energy is wasted, and there's so much we can do to fix that, as Phil was explaining. Luckily, we're beginning to make progress. We have states like Vermont and leaders like Governor Shumlin. We have California, which is really in the lead on these issues, and Senator Pavley's been a huge part of that. And we have individuals like Tom Steyer who are stepping forward and making energy efficiency really a key part of our energy strategy. But we have to do more. We have to have every state in the union require investments in all cost-effective energy efficiency so that we're getting at that existing building stock, those older buildings, we're making those retrofits and those energy efficiency improvements. And we have to have policies that are going to make that happen at our public utility commissions, and we have to have states leading by example and showing how energy efficiency can be done through making government buildings really leaders in energy efficiency. And the federal government, of course, has to do more to support the states, to fund these efforts, and to require minimum energy efficiency levels for lightings, for refrigerators, for all the products that we use in our homes and businesses so that we can do more with less energy. At NRDC, we're really stepping up our efforts on energy efficiency. We have about 100 people focused on energy efficiency and clean energy all across the country. We're making energy efficiency the cornerstone of our new plan to curb carbon pollution from power plants, using Clean Air Act authority so that we can use energy efficiency to bring down carbon levels, to make our power plants more efficient, and to give states flexibility while they're doing better. We also have an exciting new initiative working with cities across the United States. And together with the Institute for Market Transformation and other stakeholders, we're going to be partnering with 10 cities across the United States, sharing our expertise and know-how on energy efficiency, and putting in place, working with these cities to put in place energy efficiency retrofit policies that will make those cities leaders and really bring change from cities on upward to states, to our whole country, and we hope to the world. So there's a lot to be done. Everyone on this panel is doing a huge amount, and we're really excited to be here today and to get your energy and ideas in the audience as well.
Thank you so much. Kit highlighted a factoid that you don't want to forget, which is this $400 billion worth of energy costs and a huge amount of waste that's associated with that, and money that could be going into much more productive investments than just the wasted energy. But a 10-city partnership that NRDC is doing, many, many other things they're doing, stay tuned because they're bringing some of what also has been vital public policy in New York City to other cities, and it's very, very, very exciting. Just a quick rejoinder, because she had told me that her LEED certified office, USGBC does the LEED certification, is sometimes irritating because when she sits in her office and thinks, the light goes out. And I think that's probably why I said it was the thinking person's environmental group. I fully understand that when you're fighting, the lights go back on. So you have to fight to get the lights to go back on. So anyway, so that was my thinking on that. Next is our lawmaker, Fran Pavley. Now, Fran has the power resume because while others had slightly longer resumes, her basically said she is the author of California's absolutely globally known legislation committing California to address climate change.
Thank you.
Now, I am astonished that while she is working with the 8th largest economy in the world's global footprint or whatever, she is also doing a lot for her own constituents, and she told me she's doing some really interesting work, both with the military, R&D in her district, and also with other ways that she's sort of piloting things that will result in more jobs for her constituents. So she is on the job both as a real advocate for her community, but she's also doing something that's spectacularly important globally. So with that, please give us a little bit more insight into what you're up to.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Pleasure for me to be here, and thank you, Blue-Green Alliance, for inviting me to participate. You know, this coalition up here is amazing because this is exactly how we pass public policy in California. We have the support of labor, premier environmental groups like NRDC. We have the support lots of times and work collaboratively with other states and sometimes other countries. And it wouldn't get done without the support and help for people like Tom Steyer and progressive businessmen who understand that it's not a choice between the environment and the economy and are pushing the agenda and making us successful. California, just so you know a little bit about us, 38 million people, more people than all of Canada, I like to remind people. And a state senator in California represents 931,000 people. That's more than a member of Congress. And so I have to remind myself of the role that California plays in all this. And because we are so big, you know, when we pass little standards like, let's say, more energy efficient appliances like a refrigerator, pretty soon it becomes a de facto national standard. We're working collaboratively with the Energy Commission to make sure appliances and building standards and everything are enforced, and so that people that have legitimate licenses and training get those jobs, and you're not undercut by people that don't have that training. That's an important piece of this sort of puzzle that we're working on. I wanted to speak a little bit about one of the successes under AB 32 that was sort of the cornerstone of all this. It was about 10 years ago, a decade ago, that California passed our clean car law. And it's sort of indicative of how a policy in California can become a national standard. And what this bill did was sort of test the concept of reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the tailpipes of automobiles to make them more energy efficient. I thought that was relatively easy. I was a freshman legislator coming in. I didn't realize you would be taking on all the oil companies and other special interests. But we were able to prevail. Frankly, multiple lawsuits. I had to apologize to the government of Vermont because they adopted our legislation very quickly and got sued as a also on that. We had the wonderful support also of labor, and NRDC was right there with us, and a group of businessmen called environmental entrepreneurs, sort of clean tech leaders in California. So this standard got passed. It went up to the Supreme Court. Waiver was denied from the EPA. California, in order to pass more stringent air pollution standards, has to get a waiver under the Federal Clean Air Act. We eventually did with the Obama administration. And thanks to the Blue-Green Alliance and United Auto Workers, we were able to take that. It became a national policy, but with their support, it also worked with the Department of Transportation, upping our fuel efficiency standards to 54 miles per gallon. That is the future. That deserves a round of applause. It's now a national policy, and Canada's adopted it too. And what's interesting about pushing this agenda, it's a win-win-win. I think there was 3 or 4 wins in all this. Of course, cleaning up the air and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It creates new jobs, and I think it helped to revitalize the American automobile market, creating a market for this broader consumer choice of vehicles, cleaner, more fuel-efficient vehicles. Very popular right now, especially with $4 a gallon gasoline. It's reduced dependence on foreign oil and how much money we're sending to other countries that don't particularly have the best interests of the United States in mind. And this has been a very exciting piece of AB 32, but again, just a story of California and how we work collaboratively together with a variety of interests to pass these laws and protect good jobs in the future. So thank you very much for letting me tell a little bit of the story of California.
Thank you very much. I'd introduced her as the person who had authored the climate change law in California, and it's very unusual for people to have two spectacular acts in their career, and her career is still rolling along. But the second piece is this legislation in California that became the inspiration for what we've done nationally for energy efficiency in cars. And when the president was moving forward with that great initiative nationally, he had a special ceremony where he honored Fran for her role. So if it's humbling a bit what can be accomplished sometimes with your 900,000 constituents or whatever. Next is our leader. You recall we have our teacher and our advocate and our lawmaker, but we have a leader in the sitting governor of Vermont. And he is also an extraordinarily ambitious individual with progressive ideals that should not be shocking to us, but are increasingly hard to advance with the conservative momentum in our nation. So he is working and announced that Vermont will have a single-payer health insurance program, and he is working very, very diligently here, just in Washington now, to advance that. But has in Vermont, of course, on this issue of energy efficiency, he has in Efficiency Vermont and all kinds of programs in Vermont, also tremendous role models for economic development combined with environmental effectiveness. So with that, Governor, please give us some of your thoughts.
Well, thank you, and thanks so much to this great panel and to the Alliance for putting this together, and to all of you for joining us this morning. I'll try to be brief so that we can spend some time having a conversation. But, you know, I'm one of the few elected officials in America that ran for governor in 2010 on a very simple platform that I was going to help create jobs and get some tough things done by embracing the opportunity to grow Vermont's economy by facing climate change head-on, understanding that our window to make change is extraordinarily small, that if we don't scramble to change, get off our addiction to oil and move to renewables, to do energy efficiency right, this planet's going to be unlivable for our kids and grandkids. It seems like a big one to me. And that we have an opportunity to make the Industrial Revolution and the recent tech boom look small by moving in all sectors, not just energy efficiency, but generation, transportation, everything that we do, to reorient the way we do energy as a state. And we're doing it. We have, as was just mentioned, the most aggressive energy efficiency utility. It's a regulated utility in Vermont. We all pay for it through a charge on our electric bill. That's drastically reducing the amount of kilowatts that we burn. We are exporting those jobs to other states because we're getting it right. In fact, I might mention, since we're here in Washington, D.C., it's actually our efficiency that does the energy efficiency here in the district. And we're showing how we can create jobs by doing energy efficiency right. We're harnessing the wind, the sun, our fields and forests through biomass, our cow manure through the great milk that we make to make great ice cream that some of you might have eaten in your careers. And Ben & Jerry's, if you're wondering. and doing everything that we know how to address this challenge. Now, here's the results. We have doubled the number of solar panels in Vermont since I've been governor just over 2 years. We have built wind farms across the state, the first to be erected in our history. We are doing everything we know how to not only win on the electric utility efficiency front, but moving to thermal, because we're a cold state and we leak a lot of that foreign oil from our windows and our doors and our buildings. So we're conquering that one. But most importantly, we're getting the results. Vermont right now, because of our investments and manufacturing of the components to make this transition from oil to other ways of powering the future, happens to have the third lowest unemployment rate in America. That's a big deal. I want to point out that the states that are beating us, 1 and 2, happen to be beating us by extracting things from the ground that we're trying to get off our addiction to. So, you know, had it not been for the oil and gas they're drilling for, we'd be number 1. Second, we have more green, clean, high-tech jobs per capita than any other state in the nation. That's a new result because we're making these investments. And third, and perhaps most importantly, as governors who are trying to create jobs and economic opportunities, but also to raise the incomes of those who have jobs, because we know that the big challenge for America over the last decade has been stagnant incomes. We were actually the only state in America in 2011 to see income growth. It was only 4%, but guess what? It was 4% better than the other 49 states in America. So my message to all of us in this room is simple. If we could change our language about this conversation and this moral imperative to leave this planet very quickly in better shape than the way we found it, and talk about the jobs and economic opportunities that lie out there for those that go first, we would be winning this battle to ensure that the biggest energy hog in the world, the United States of America, becomes the jobs nation, where jobs are growing, incomes are rising, and we have a prosperous future. That's my message as a governor.
Check your watches and calendars. You are here and you heard a great leader. It is wonderful, and it is all too infrequent to find people who you want to have lead you at a time when these issues seem so challenging. The emphasis on the fact that these things are working is a source of some excitement to me, a little bit of frustration in that you can keep showing tremendous success, and some people seem to not be seduced into accepting this very powerful truth. We have, as our next speaker, an individual. I haven't been able to give him the one-word title that I wanted to give everybody else of teacher and leader, because he's had a very eclectic career. He is, in many respects, an example of sort of the American success story of someone who's accomplished a lot in the business world and produced a lot of investment that's created jobs and created impact. But he's also turned his attention full-time to being essentially a kind of citizen activist with a huge understanding of the intersection of industry, business, economics issues, and environment and clean energy. So he is a good person to play backup and give us some of the vision and some of the specific ideas that you think are going to be necessary to create the kind of world that could have leaders like the governor in this, what I think still feels a little bit like an alternative universe in which there are all these wonderful people working together, but let's try to make it something more real. Tom Steyer.
So thank you very much for having me, and I do think what these guys have said has been very inspirational. What I'm going to talk about is pretty practical at the moment, which is how to get something done in a system when jobs and energy are not necessarily linked in everybody's minds. And what I'm going to talk about is a proposition that we passed in California last November, and I want to try and analogize it to the whole United States, because I think in some ways, both good and bad, California has politically been ahead of the country. We famously went broke before the United States went broke. We famously had almost complete gridlock in our legislature before the United States had almost complete gridlock in their legislature. And the difference in this case is that we have had a series of really amazing leaders, including Fran Pavley, who over a decade have worked on energy policy consistently and, in my opinion, incredibly successfully. So when you're in a system where there is no extra money, which we in California have been in for about a decade, and where it's very hard to pass things, the first thing you need to do for a new proposal or a new idea is to find a revenue source. So for Proposition 39 last year, the new revenue source we found was corporations who were paying less than everybody else in their state income tax. And there was a loophole in the law which enabled out-of-state corporations to pay less than everybody else. And really for the reason of gridlock in our legislature, the Democrats kept trying to get that through, and they never could close this loophole. So we put a proposition on the ballot basically to say, let's close this loophole. It's worth $1 billion a year to California. And if you're gonna, we wanted to use that money for energy efficiency in public schools and state office buildings. So we had a very obvious thing to do, which we described in the language that Peter Shumlin was just using. That basically, if we did this, we would create a lot of jobs. We figured that we created about 20 jobs per $1 million. We would reduce our carbon footprint. We would produce savings, because we tried to describe this as an investment in our schools and office buildings, in the sense that we didn't just spend the money and the money went away. We would spend the money, and as a result, we would save about 30% of our energy savings every year, and that money in the school budget after that could be going to teachers, it could be going to school books, it could basically be going to the education of our children. And we viewed this as the lowest hanging fruit. As Kit Kennedy said, this was the most straightforward thing we could do from an energy standpoint. This was the most straightforward thing we could do from a job standpoint. And we basically had found a way to fund it, which in a society, when governments are out of money, finding a source of new revenue is something that is extremely difficult to do. We also had the advantage, we've actually turned this subsequently specifically to the public schools, where it has the advantage of, our schools, many of them have not been retrofitted for over 30 years. And as a result, the HVAC systems are really old and in need of replacement. And as a result, the air in the classrooms is actually really terrible. And so one of the benefits of this, beyond the money, beyond the carbon footprint, is actually the health of our kids. So that as a result of saying this, we can show that the kids will be healthier, and believe it or not, we can show that their test scores will be higher. So we basically went through this, and I'll just make two more points. One is about coalition, which is, as Fran said, in California, the group of people who worked on this were bipartisan. I co-chaired it with a Republican, George Shultz, who'd been in 3 Republican administrations going back to Dwight Eisenhower. We had very, very strong labor support. Art Pulaski, who's the head of the AFL in California, was absolutely instrumental in supporting us. He basically enabled us, along with 2 other propositions, to knock on 5 million doors. The head of the building trades, Robbie Hunter, was someone else who from the very beginning understood what the implications of this were. His unions had had an incredibly high unemployment rate as a result of the financial bust, and he could see that this was going to be tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 jobs to people who he was, not just to he was representing, but to people in California. So that we had a very strong labor representation, but we also got business behind this. And in addition, we reached out to every ethnicity, because one of the points, the big political points for us has been that if you look at the polling, the ethnic group in California that cares the most about the environment is Latinos. The number 2 group is Asian Americans. The number 3 group is African Americans. Our coalition we've done this twice. We have always worked really hard to reach out to everybody across the state and to try and get both business and labor to understand that this was a jobs program and a economic success story, and also to every community to say the face of environmentalism is different from what most people think. I would say, you know, we've done this twice. We got about 62% of the vote. This was something that we were able to push. Well, I mean, the funny thing, I'm not a professional politician. I'm very far from a professional politician. I'm sitting up here with 2 people who are professional politicians. But it seems to me, at least in propositions, the key is to overcome is to push out your opponents very early. And in the things that we're doing, a lot of times our opponents are extremely large, well-financed companies. And what we've tried to do in thinking about this is, how are we going to negate their influence? And a lot of that has to do with what Peter was talking about in terms of language, and a lot of it has to do with strategy. So the one thing that I would say, and I'll stop now, is I believe that the strategies and the techniques that we've used in California can be used across the country. I believe that we can win this politically on a local basis using the same arguments and the same coalitions that we've used in California. And I really hope that together we can go out and prove that that is true going forward.
I think we're almost completely out of time, and which is frustrating, but was what we were told with a rough thing. What I wanted to do was to make sure that we gave the governor another opportunity, also perhaps following up what you've heard from the other speakers, what you heard from Tom, the very encouraging, very, very encouraging signal he's sending that there's real lessons learned from these successes in what is hopefully not just a uniquely Californian direct democracy scenario of these propositions, but where there's real, first strike capability, political savvy that he was reflecting there. Yeah, just give us some of your sense about what can the folks in the room do to be helpful, and what are some lessons you're thinking are most important to reinforce at this point?
Well, I think the panel has done a great job of outlining the opportunities. I want to go to something that Tom just closed with, which is, how we organize better. It's messaging, but it's also, and I think this is really important to everybody sitting here, it's recognizing that most big political movements in this country come from the grassroots, and the politicians are usually the last to get there, and this one's no different. So since we know that many of you are way ahead of the people that you elect, think of every single opportunity that we can to not only change the messaging, but get folks mobilized. Now, as an example, in Vermont right now, we have almost 3/4 of our towns have a local volunteer energy committee. We've coordinated them through state government. And they're competing with each other, town by town, village by village, to beat each other in both energy efficiency and renewable deployment. And as an example, I was last Saturday at this little town of Waterbury, which has doubled the number of solar and other renewable installations in the community in the last 12 months, and they're planning to triple it in the next year. The whole community's involved. It was a kind of a fair where everyone showed their products and where the whole town turned out to get involved. So the people are ahead of us on this one in terms of the politicians, and we've got to find ways to mobilize them. And the second thing I would say is this. When we have opportunities that hit us, it's important to not let them evaporate, as we often do in this country. Example, as a governor, I have managed now 3 major climate change-induced storms, one of which, Tropical Storm Irene, hit our little state so hard that we lost 7 Vermonters, that we lost businesses, we lost homes, we lost, just extraordinary infrastructure. Just a few months later, Sandy hits, and you see the governor of New Jersey and the governor of New York struggling to put back together their climate change-induced challenges. And what we've got to do is ensure that we're not only talking about the jobs of the future, but also the current costs of our energy policies that are dragging millions and millions of dollars out of our pockets to rebuild infrastructure because of the way the weather patterns have already changed. And we've really got to teach all of us, I believe, to talk about these challenges for what they are, an early signal of what the planet will be like, not 100 years from now, but 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, if we don't all work together to hold politicians' feet to the fire, to capture the jobs, and to ensure that this is our top priority in the way we lead our lives, use our volunteer time, and vote for politicians. We should stop voting and electing politicians who deny that climate change exists.
Okay, well, no one's coming out and giving me the hook, so I'm gonna soldier forward and give you some more good info here. Fran, you can add either some additional words of wisdom or some practical insights for these groups that you've learned from the success you've had building these coalitions, making things happen. You know, I do want to end on some of that positive note of what can be accomplished. Fran.
Very good. I'd love to tell success stories.
Please.
So that's very good. And I'll share with you one. California, by putting a cap on emissions and requiring a rollback to 1990 levels, has created an unbelievable market for opportunity. And AB 32 passed back in 2006, and we've seen an amazing amount of investment in new clean technologies, in renewable energy, alternative fuels, and you're exactly right. We talked about water as the next energy efficiency measure, critically important in California. This is sort of an era that requires a lot of our attention. 20% of all the energy we use in California is moving, treating, and heating water. So, Mr. Steyer, your next proposition, perhaps something in the water arena would be good. But we actually have also under AB 32, under cap and trade, is possibility of using auction revenues to really increase and enhance jobs, not only in water efficiency and water conservation, but in a variety of other ways. But my one success story I wanted to share with you is regarding our renewable portfolio standard. In California, 33% of all our energy has to come from clean renewable sources. We have applause for that. And here's the amazing thing about this story. So over the years, we gradually increased it, 10%, 20%, 33%. You know, it was this sort of false, non-partisan issue, Democrats voting yes, Republicans voting no. On our 33% vote, 4 Republican state senators stood up on the floor supporting a move to 33%. Why? Because over the last several years, there are businesses in their districts, jobs being created in their districts. These new business owners and people working at these jobs are members of their chambers of commerce. This became a nonpartisan issue because it was a jobs issue, and it really was an amazing win-win moment. I sat there on the floor and I realized we can create these successes, and that's how we put people together. So that's my ending story.
Thank you, Fran. And finally, we thank you. We are getting the hook now. The Congresswoman is standing by, and so thank you. You've been a great audience, and this has been a wonderful, inspiring panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Well, thank you very much to our panel. And listening to Governor Shumlin, I see he stands in a long tradition of governors from Vermont that the rest of the country ought to pay close attention to. I'm very happy now to make the next introduction of our final speaker this morning. Coming from the Twin Cities in Minnesota, I'm happy to always tell people I'm the only person who has 2 members of Congress representing me. I live on the border between Minneapolis and St. Paul, and so I'm very happy to have a Congresswoman from my home state with us today, Betty McCollum. In 2000, Congresswoman McCollum made history in Minnesota by becoming only the 2nd Minnesota woman elected to service in Congress since it became a state in 1858. Having since been reelected 6 times, Congresswoman McCollum now serves as the senior Democratic whip with the Democratic caucus and sits on the all-important House Appropriations Committee, Subcommittee on Defense, and Subcommittee on Interior, Environment, and related agencies. She's also been a strong historic supporter of clean energy. One of the very first meetings that the Blue-Green Alliance held in Minnesota many years ago was in the St. Paul Labor Federation, and it was a meeting in which Congresswoman McCollum exhorted all of us to go out and make the clean energy economy of the future our reality today. So please join me in welcoming Congresswoman Betty McCollum.
Good morning. I realize you've been sitting for a while. I'm a former teacher. I'm figuring out this podium is very, very slick. It was designed for something else, not to have paper up here. So if it goes flying, the speech will be a lot shorter. Well, Dave, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for all the work that you've done and all that you've inspired us to do, not only nationally, but here in Minnesota. I am really excited to be here today. I'm proud of the movement that you're leading. This alliance is proof that we don't have to choose between a healthy economy and a healthy planet. We can provide good jobs and a green economy. We can pursue a path using America's manufacturing to secure America's energy independence. Now, I know you just heard from the panel. I was in the green room listening to some of the work that they've done at the state level, and I'm proud of the work Minnesota's done as well. Now, St. Paul District Energy predates the alliance here today, but it is something that was an anchor in providing jobs, energy, and a green coalition. District Energy is efficient in its energy distribution, and it grew out of a demonstration project that was invested by our downtown businesses, private sector, the state of Minnesota public at a state level, and the U.S. Department of Energy. So we know how to move forward in a collaborative effort when we put our minds to it. The work of our states and our private industries and private sector need to be supported, and they need to be reinforced at the national level. We need to do smart investments, and we also need to look at targeted tax credits. But it's going to be hard work to get that support, because right now in Congress we're fighting against the most anti-worker, anti-environment Congress in modern history. Let me just give you a little bit about what House leadership on the Republican side's been up to. They've eliminated our federal investments in clean energy to the best of their ability whenever they get a chance. They have blocked any and all efforts to address climate change. And just recently, they undermined the National Labor Relations Act. So House Republicans are committed to rewarding polluters and profiteers and punishing innovators in green technology and infrastructure. Just the opposite of what we heard states are doing all around this country in working together to address some of these issues. The national Republican agenda is taking us backwards. So I want to thank you, and thank those who are working in a bipartisan effort at state levels. I can't say enough. I want to thank you for fighting for our future. It is your determination, your innovations, and your agenda that we need to hear in Washington and all across America. You are leading the way for a much-needed wake-up call. You are showing what can be achieved by bringing the best in technology to solve America's energy problems and the crisis of climate change. You are showing us the power of partnering. Everyone in this room and this panel has stories that they can share of what happens when local, state, and federal government come together. It is powerful. You know the power of combining public, private, and nonprofit funds. This conference is spreading a strong message that combines energy and passion for the environment and for our working families. Now, personally, I'm happy to work with you anytime. And as I stated, many of my Republican colleagues nationally are focused on cutting now. So they are not thinking about federal investments and our ability to grow smart into the future. Even as we are dealing with reckless sequestration cuts, many national Republicans have doubled down with budgets that slash funding for education, energy, infrastructure, and research. Now, this is not what our families and our country need. We need to be focused on reinvesting the foundation of what has made this nation great. This is the time to make major investments in infrastructure and start a smart, modern power grid. If you want to diagnose our country, you could say America's workers built bones of this country. But at this point, we're in need of a hip replacement. So you need to, we've diagnosed the problem and you know how to correct it. So I want to thank you for your support of the Recovery Act. Through that, we created and invested billions of dollars and created millions of jobs. So we know we have the ability to rebuild our country and rebuild our economy. It's time to strengthen those investments. And that's what you're helping us do. You're helping us to look at where America can go next. And we need, as Americans, to lead the world in clean energy innovation. Making those smart investments here will put Americans back to work. It'll create good-paying jobs, and it will create union jobs. Looking around this room, I know you're poised and ready to make America the powerhouse it should be in the green economy. Now, it's our responsibility, my responsibility as a federal legislator, to create the environment that encourages that growth. If we want homegrown energy and homegrown jobs, then we need to plant the seeds. Now, as Dave pointed out, I'm from Minnesota, St. Paul. We're the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, so that we know back home that seeds need good soil, fresh air, sunlight. In other words, they need a healthy environment. And right now, we're facing, as I said earlier, in the House of Representatives, people who don't seem to get it. We have hundreds of attempts being made since they gained the majority to cut the EPA, to undermine the protections offered by the Clean Air and Water Acts. Now, I know that we can do a better job. I know that we don't want our cost of growth to come at a cost of our health. We are seeing daily what unregulated growth is doing to China. China's pollution in its major cities has created an environment that is literally toxic and lethal. The price of ignoring government impact and its opportunity to regulate is leading in China, and if we're not careful here, a reduced quality of life. That's the price that's paid by families and communities as they struggle with the fallout of pollution and climate change. And that's why I am so glad you're here. Your work is so important at the Blue-Green Alliance. You are uniting around jobs. You will provide the stability for America's working families. And you are coming together to speak for the health and the safety for those same families, because we cannot have healthy families without a healthy planet. We know that climate change is a reality, and we know we cannot afford to ignore its consequences. Taking climate change seriously requires us to find ways to reduce our emissions and to slow the buildup of greenhouse gases. But it also requires us to meet the reality of change as it's happening. We have to prepare, and we have to invest in a green infrastructure. Our nation's infrastructure is crumbling, and added the stress of climate change, it threatens our economy and our safety. But pressing needs to build our nation infrastructure is coming from you. So let me just tell you a couple of things that I know that we can work on and we're talking about in Congress, many of us. We're talking about more efficient water management systems. And on the Interior Committee, we've had a bipartisan discussion about that. We've talked about green spaces and urban renewal, investments in public transportation, constructing roads and bridges and power grids to withstand the extreme weather threats, as we just recently saw in New York. But there is one organization at the federal level who really gets this, and as Dave pointed out, I serve on the Defense Committee. A great model, believe it or not, we can look at is the United States Department of Defense. Yes, the DoD gets it. Who knew? They know that investments in green energy are going to make them more efficient and make all of us more secure. That's why they're aiming on goals like 100% renewable energy on some bases. They're doing it. They're walking the talk. This month, the Army will begin its largest renewable energy project in the United States military history at Fort Bliss in Texas. So as a member of the Appropriations Committee, not only on the Interior but DoD, I'm going to be fighting hard for green energy and infrastructure funds. If the DoD can show the way to do it, maybe those who are skeptics will wake up in Congress and follow their lead. But we need to do this across all of our federal agencies. So I want you to know my door is open to you. I'm here to work with you. We need to get more members of Congress on board, and that's why you're here to spread the message. So tell them about the private funds that are leveraged by these federal dollars. Let them know about the critical need to extend the wind protection tax credit long term, and show them how many jobs. You have had so many examples over today and yesterday. Show them how many jobs have been saved, how many more could be created by investing in a green economy. So come, be our teachers, be our leaders. You've been blazing the trail. Hold your head up high, share the stories, and tell us it's time to get to work. Thank you for leading the way. Thank you for being here. And I'm seeing all the Apple computers lit up. There are so many ways we can spread the word, but I can't tell you how important it is that you're going to congressional offices and meeting one-on-one with staff and members to share your stories. It will be shared, it will be impactful, it will be powerful, but then follow up in the district offices back home. Ask them out to see the projects that you know are right in those districts, the projects that make a difference for a stronger America, for a healthier America, and for a better environment. Thank you.
Well, that sounded like a personal invitation to go and lobby tomorrow. So it's the perfect opportunity to remind you that we have Lobby Day tomorrow, Advocacy Day, starting at 8 a.m. here. We can go and visit our representatives as well as remind them about the importance of both our climate and our jobs agenda. I want to thank you all for being here today. We are going to break right now. You have 10:30 workshops starting at 10:30 this morning. And then I just want to remind you that we have a terrific panel and plenary speaker this afternoon at 4:30. So whatever you do, don't miss that. We're going to have President Trumpka from the AFL-CIO joining us, as well as a really great speaking panel. And so we'll see you back here at 4:30, and enjoy your day at the workshops. Thank you again.